Hey everyone, it's Tabria, your host for Milk Drunk, and I'm back with another exciting episode with not one, but two lovely guests today. Joining us is licensed and certified professional midwife and mother of three, Debbie Allen, whose mission is to support and celebrate the many choices expectant parents must make to formulate a birth story that truly represents them. And if having a professional midwife in the studio isn't exciting enough, we also have New York Times bestselling author, advocate, consultant, educator, sociologist, speaker, scholar, and mother of three, Dr. Anna Malaika Tubbs here. Welcome, both you guys. And if that was not enough, wait until you hear these intros we have for you. Now, a little about each of you. Debbie is the founder of Tribe Midwifery, which offers a range of high-level medical care, including prenatal care, family planning, birth, and postpartum care visits, and midwifery services that honor each family's choice to birth in a safe and supportive environment, whether it be at home, in a birthing center, or a hospital. Tribe Midwifery integrates both medical and holistic care into its dedicated practice and offers the childbirth education class to help families feel comfortable and empowered to make informed choices no matter where they give birth. Debbie has created a beautiful village of support for families in the greater Los Angeles area, and Tribe Midwifery clients are forever part of her tribe. I love that. Yes. It's beautiful, right? And now, Anna grew up around the world watching her mother advocate for women's and children's rights. Now she uses an intersectional lens to advocate for women of color and educate others in her projects. With a PhD in sociology and a master's in multidisciplinary gender studies and a bachelor's in medical anthropology, Anna's groundbreaking work focuses on addressing gender and race issues in the U.S., especially the pervasive erasure of Black women. In addition to her critically acclaimed debut book, The Three Mothers, How the Mothers of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin Shaped a Nation, Anna's writes on crucial topics such as the forced sterilization of Black women and the importance of feminism, intersectionality, and inclusivity. Lastly, but certainly not least, she's a proud mama of three gorgeous children. And I'm so excited to have both of you brilliant ladies on the podcast today. How do you feel after hearing those intros? Aren't they great? I know. Everyone says they feel like so important after. And I'm like, you guys, you did all of this. You know, you realize that. Right, exactly. Yeah. But first, thank you all both for being here today. It's going to be an amazing conversation. I'm so happy to have you. I want to start with you, Anna. You have three kids, correct? How old are they?
Yes, I have an almost 5-year-old, an almost 3-year-old. Debbie, can you believe it?
Oh my gosh.
And almost 9-month-old.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you have your hands full.
In the best ways.
Yeah,
in
literally. Were your pregnancies really different with each of them?
That's so interesting. They were all very, I would say, like manageable in terms of the range that pregnancy can be for different folks. I had beautiful pregnancies, wonderful deliveries. My second two, largely because of Debbie, were so amazing. But they were a little different. I had different cravings. A strange thing that happens with my boys, and I never find out the sex until the day of that they're born.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I
so
should say
exciting.
my husband, he's a part of it too.
Yeah.
Let me not leave him out. We don't find out the sex till the day that they're born. And with my boys, though, I had these really weird dreams. And I always joke with everybody that it felt like there was almost like a teenage boy in my head. This like very like action-packed dreams. I did not have this with Maya. She's my girl in the middle. And then the third time, I again wasn't finding out the sex, but I had the dreams. And so the whole time I was like, this is probably a boy. So just a fun little fact.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm sure everyone's different, but I always wonder, like, are there, you hear about the old wives' tales, like, if you have heartburn, that means you're going to have a lot of hair. If you carry low, you're having a boy. But for me, like, I had a girl, and I didn't have any of the girl symptoms.
Yeah, what did you have?
Like, I had pretty bad morning sickness, or just sickness in general. It's not just the morning. But I carried really well,
Wow.
I only gained 15 pounds. She was 10 pounds.
Wow.
And my face didn't change. And they say, when you have a girl, they take all your beauty away or whatever. But nothing changed. My nose didn't even spread. I'm like, dang.
Wow. I didn't change that much.
Yeah.
No. I gain a lot of weight, though. It's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, well, all three I've gained 50 pounds.
Really?
Yeah, but I just really truly believe your body knows what it needs to do. Your
sure.
cravings, you have to just listen to yourself and not like judge yourself, not think of, and I mean, not that I would want to step on the scale that much, but especially my first time, I delivered at a hospital. So, you know, they weigh you every single time you go in. Debbie doesn't weigh you at all when you go in. So it's really just not even a concern, but I always get really fascinated by all the changes. And so, yeah, with Malachi it was 50 pounds and same with the other two. And then immediately when they're born, it's like, just wild to see how powerful our bodies are and the changes that we undergo. I just look at all those changes more from an angle of it's brilliant what our bodies can do.
It is. Sometimes I never even, or when I was pregnant, I just never really considered what our bodies were really going through at the time. It's just thinking how we literally created a little body of cells and then all the organs and then they're able to breathe. It's mind-blowing.
It really is.
It's overwhelming thinking about it, to be honest.
Yeah, it seems like it shouldn't even, it's like science fiction.
No, literally. You have an existential crisis if you dwell on it too much.
Yeah.
But you said all of your labors were pretty fine too.
They were beautiful. I mean, they were difficult. Don't get me wrong.
Of course, it just wasn't a walk in the park.
And I've done all 3 unmedicated. And that was just a vision that I had of really, for me, it's really important that we are able to have what we hope to have, right? That we feel informed about the decisions that we are making, that the people around us are listening to us and paying attention and have kind of helped us form that vision of what our birth is going to look like. And of course, we remain open to any shifts that may need to happen. But when I had my first, I met with my doula and I was approaching my labor from an angle of fear, really largely, because I study so much around Black women and Black maternal health, and we know the numbers are horrible in the U.S., and I just felt very afraid. And she'd asked me why I wanted to work with her, and I said, I just know so much is going to be out of my control, and there's not much that I'm going to be able to decide for myself. And she let me kind of talk through all those fears, and then she stopped me and she said, I want you to know, actually, that you're more in control of this than you think. And we are your team around you to help your vision become reality. And you are the leader of this, but you're not the only member of this team. We're not just going to be sitting there kind of like patting you on the shoulder, saying good job and, go through it on your own. Your husband is a part of your team. Your baby is a part of your team. The birth workers around you are part of your team. And everybody's going to be listening to you and taking cues from you. And when she shifted my mindset around that power, it just really helped me see everything really differently. And then I actually wanted to do a home birth with my first, but my husband and my mom were very concerned about this. And so by the second and third time, we'd moved to LA, and I'm going to have my home birth experiences. And I was so lucky to find Debbie. And we'll talk more about that at some point. I can ramble. But I would say they are difficult, but it's transformative. And each time I've given birth, I feel like I have transcended humanity. I feel like I'm just like a goddess walking among like regular folk. I could look at my husband like, you could never, look what I just did.
Literally.
No, seriously.
And I have so much energy and excitement and just so much love for, of course, this being, but it's so much love for myself. And I think a lot of folks don't talk about their labor experiences from this self-celebration, but I really truly feel right, after I push them. I mean, we go through a lot of drama. Debbie's looking at me like, okay,
no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
I called Debbie a liar while I'm in labor before.
She's very funny when she's in labor.
That's hilarious.
I'll let her tell you about those moments.
Yes.
But basically, Debbie's like, we're almost there. And I'm like, stop lying to me. By the time they come out, though, I'm very like, yes, look what I did. Look at us. But there's some drama in the middle.
Yeah. I love how you described you having a birthing team, essentially, because that's exactly how I felt, too, with my midwives.
Yeah.
They were just, this is like a group effort. You're spearheading it, you're leading everything, but we are following your cues, and we are here to support you in every way. And my boyfriend was just there coaching me the whole time. It was truly amazing. So I love that you really described it like that.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to jump into the nitty-gritty because I want to hear all about it. But first, what were your husband and family's reservations about having a home birth, especially the first time?
This is really interesting. So I should backtrack. My sister had also done a home birth with her second, and I was there, and I was able to see it and be with my niece, who was the older of the two. And it just felt so powerful. It was so different than what I'd seen on TV and these representations of it. Just this felt like what I wanted. But I think for my husband and for my mom, they were thinking this was my first time. I might not know once it began how I felt, and maybe I'd want to go to the hospital or something. And so I was trying to listen to them, but we found a middle ground where I said, okay, I'm going to have 2 doulas with me. It's very important to me to have women of color around me. And I am going to be listening to them, and I'm going to be working with them. And it was really fascinating for me as a researcher to see the difference in the way my doulas were treating me and the way my nurses were treating me. My nurses kept saying things like, you look like you're in a lot of pain. Like, are you sure you don't want medicine? And they hadn't seen, the nurses at least who worked with me, had never seen a woman give birth unmedicated. And so they were very confused by like why I was doing this. And so they kept just asking so many questions. They were like pointing at me and just saying very strange things. They felt that I was moving around too much around the room. So had my doulas not been there, it would not have been labor that I wanted. So I'm grateful that I advocated for myself and still was able to have the beautiful labor that I envisioned, while also kind of appeasing my husband and my mom, which wasn't necessarily like that important, but I then had this fear, maybe they're right. Maybe there's something they know that I don't know. Maybe I should just listen, because as birthing people, as women, we often feel like if something goes wrong, it's going to be our fault. And everyone's going to be looking at you like, why did you make that decision? When of course that's not, things just can happen sometimes in like a small set of examples. But I felt that pressure the first time, like maybe I don't know.
And things happen in the hospital.
Yeah, of
exactly.
course. Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember my midwives, what did they say? They were like, a lot of people are nervous about having home births because you hear about the horror stories, but you only hear about them because those are the hospital transfers that happen. You never hear about the positive experiences. And I think she said it's like 2% or something, that it's such a low statistic that it's like, why aren't we at least talking about it more? You know what I'm saying?
And the horrible experiences, especially for Black women, are that much more present in hospitals.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the thing that a lot of folks, when I talk about home births, and I say it now very proudly, will say, well, weren't you so nervous about things that could happen? I'm like, I actually think it's more courageous to go into a hospital as a Black woman than it is to say, I'm going to do this with a midwife. I'm going to do this with a midwife and my doula. I'm going to have my family around me. I'm going to be at home where I'm being seen as a human being, where my desires are being respected, where my needs and wants are being met. So it's a really fascinating kind of reversal, but I do think we're starting to see that a little bit more, and I'd love to hear, Debbie, what you think about that.
No,
but a shift. No. Because come here and listen to me talk. A shift, a little bit culturally, but I mean, we'll talk about that. It's unfortunately becoming something that you can only do if you can afford it. So, there's a lot to be said about that, but I don't want to jump too far ahead.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Debbie, because we mentioned doulas and midwives so much, can you tell us the difference between a doula and a midwife?
So a doula is there for your emotional and physical support, education. The midwife takes the place of your OB. So you can see a midwife completely only a midwife and not an OB. We send you for your ultrasounds, we do your lab work, we see you monthly until you're 28 weeks and bi-monthly until you're 36 weeks, weekly until you have your baby. So we provide everything that your OB can provide, with the exception of cesarean. But all the prenatally, everything that your OB does, we do.
Yes.
And postpartum.
And postpartum,
yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. So when I told my family I said, I just want to try a home birth, because I had my reservations about it too. It was my first time. They were just incredibly nervous. They weren't surprised. If anybody knows me, it's like not surprising that, of course, Tabria wants to do a home birth. She got to be different with everything. But they were like, what if something goes wrong? And I'm like, well, they're prepared to handle, emergency situations. It's not just an automatic transfer to hospital if something goes wrong. So, and when I discussed it with my friends, that was a huge concern of theirs. What if something goes wrong? So can you speak to what you're able to handle as a midwife, like what constitutes a hospital transfer. I don't know if that's like a convoluted answer, but
I think it's just a misconception that what people have about what midwives do at home.
Yeah.
Like they think we just burn sage in the corner and pray that your baby comes out.
Literally.
But the beauty of birth is most of the times we don't have to be very hands-on. Really what we're there for is to handle things that are out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
So we bring meds, we bring Pitocin and Methogen and IV and oxygen. Like we bring things for things that are out of the ordinary. And typically we still stay at home, even with those. Probably the thing we deal with most, I deal with most, is probably bleeding. And so we bring all the things for that and very rarely transfer and handle it the same way that you do in the hospital.
Yeah.
So I think people don't realize that. They don't think that we bring any medication. They don't think that we suture if you tear.
Exactly,
Like
yes.
that we bring lidocaine to numb you. They really just have a very, old-fashioned way of thinking of what midwives look like, even though the foundation of obstetrics, the education about that comes from midwives. So that's where that training comes from. But yeah, we're very prepared for out of ordinary things. And the other thing about how people think that if you're in the hospital, the perspective that they give you is when we transport is, thank God you were here because you could have died at home. But they don't look at it as we're there because it was inappropriate for you to be at home. And that's why everything's okay, because we transport it in a way that's responsible so that you can be there when you need more than what we can provide for you at home.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a doctor. She's a family doctor, and I told her about my birthing experience and whatnot, and I had a pretty bad tear. It's like a 2.5 degree tear, and she was like, they were able to stitch you up at home, and I'm like, yeah. And I was just surprised, like, she's a doctor and she didn't know that. I'm like, yeah, they can handle everything.
I've had doctors, like someone just gave birth that was a doctor, but it was funny because someone was getting care with me and their OB, and their OB wanted to come to, she'd never been to a home birth, so she was like, I want to come. And so she came, she literally, like, almost fainted. Nothing was happening. The person was just having a baby, but I think she looked around the room and saw that, because I was like, it's a midwife and an OB. We don't need, like, we should be able to handle whatever comes.
Yeah.
But I looked over and she was gray. We had to put her on the floor and put her feet up because I think she looked around the room and thought like, oh, it's just us. Because when you have a baby in the hospital, the OB does their very specific thing. If the baby needs help, they pass the baby here. But at home, we do all of that. So I think it kind of hit her in the middle of it. And I chuckled when I saw her because I'm like, you've delivered way more babies than me. Like, and nothing's happening. You should be okay.
No, totally. But that's so funny you say that because I remember I had concurrent care. So I saw my midwives and I saw my OB still. But I remember one appointment, they told me she was going to be late. So I was like, oh, okay, well, because she's delivering a baby. And I'm like, well, how long are we going to be waiting here? That could take forever. And it was literally like 15 minutes because they're literally just there to deliver the baby.
That's it.
And I couldn't imagine going through that process because I'm meeting with you for all these weeks at a time. And then when I'm actually in labor, I'm just surrounded by this whole team of people I've never met. And it's no wonder people don't feel comfortable advocating for themselves, in that situation because it's like, you are all new people. Yeah. How am I supposed to trust you?
Strangers.
Yeah, strangers, totally. So, yeah.
That's one of my favorite parts of working with Debbie is that you do get to know each other so personally. And we have these hour-long, I don't even know what to call them because it's not like an appointment. It feels more like we're hanging out.
Yeah, literally.
Without taking like the officialness away from it. Yeah. But you get to sit, you get to talk. I get to bring my other 2 kids and, they love Debbie as much as I love Debbie. She's letting them hold, the heart monitor so they can check on baby. And the whole process is just completely different than feeling so rushed in a lot of these visits, feeling like you're only being spoken to because of how much you weigh.
Yeah.
Or it's just like and I've done both and seen those contrasts very clearly, but it's just a beautiful experience leading up to it. And for my kids too, they knew when Debbie came to the house, this meant it was time that they were going to meet their baby, right? And it's just powerful. It allows you to just feel so much more human. And also just so much more relaxed. Like 45 minutes of our sessions, we're just hanging out and talking and catching up.
Yeah.
And she's able to check in with me on, little things like, how are things going with you and Michael? Are you guys happy?
Yes.
Are you feeling supported? What are the fears you might have? What are things that are stressing you out? How's work going? Right? All of those factors actually really do matter for mothers to thrive, for us to feel like we're ready and equipped for this baby to come into the world. It's not come in, Let's weigh you, get out, right? And I think that's what also makes the difference. So that when you go into the room, or they come to you actually on day of, and you're moving, because I move through different spaces. I'm in and out of the bathroom, in and out of the bath. I'm just constantly moving in my labors. You just feel like this is one of my, like, truly one of my best friends.
Yes.
Right? Who cares deeply about me, knows me well, also knows my humor, knows when I'm being silly, right? All of those things really contribute to a beautiful experience when your baby's born.
It truly does. I'm so glad you said that, because I felt the exact same way seeing the difference in my appointments, because my midwife's appointments were an hour. At the hospital, it was 10 minutes. And literally, they weighed you first, take your blood pressure. But when I stepped into my midwife's living room, it felt like, they always ask me, how are you feeling physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally? Like, how are you as a person feeling? How's your relationship? Are you experiencing any hurdles right now? It was just such a more well-rounded approach. And my midwives were white, but it was really important to me that my OBs were women of color. And I found a team. Everybody was a woman of color there. But even still having that level of relatability, it still felt detached, because it just felt like such a clinical, sterilized version of what that other experience was. So.
And that's the thing. It's not any individual's fault, right?
Yeah, of
it's
course.
not like any individual OB.
Of course.
I mean, that has some factors as well. But there are many amazing doctors out there. And I often say I'm somebody who, like, when you need medication, I get it. It's wonderful. Like, I'm not saying that we don't need this.
Right.
But the thing about birth, the thing about pregnancy is that it really doesn't require medicine, right? Until it does.
Absolutely.
And so we have to have this kind of cultural shift in our minds where we're not saying all doctors are terrible. No, we love them. When we need them, thank God for them, right? But what we do when we over-medicalize things is that we remove a very natural human experience. And we don't often think about the history of why obstetrics even came to be, why the first kind of doctors in this field were men, were white men who created a system just basically trying to claim that they knew something that women did not know about our own bodies, about our own ability to bring life into this world. They felt left out of that and felt that they needed to take control of it. And so sadly, a system that's been built on that sentiment and largely on experimenting on the bodies of Black women, still to this day, we're going to see the repercussions of that. Even if those individual doctors are lovely,
Absolutely.
Sadly, they're a part of a tradition that started with the idea that we needed to remove control from women. So that's why we still see it today. Even if you have a lovely relationship with someone, they don't have control over whether it can be 10 minutes or an hour. They're part of a system.
Right, exactly.
And so I also just want to make sure we're not at all ever villainizing wonderful doctors, but sadly, the way it's currently set up doesn't allow them to have those human relationships that we get to have with our midwives.
Yeah.
And I agree. Thank God doctors are there. I'm not anti any of that. But looking at a pregnant body from a liability standpoint instead of a human standpoint is really a huge part of the problem too. Because if how I'm going to deal with you is based on how the small perspective of space where I might get sued, I'm going to be very conservative in how I look at you, because that's the safest. That's going to keep my insurance levels the lowest. That's going to keep the practice that I practice with the safest. But it doesn't allow me to operate in the huge range of what's normal. So I'm only looking at you from a very narrow perspective of who you are. So the care you're getting is going to be limited because liability. Really. And so obstetrics is a very, it's one of the most sued professions. So they look at you from a very, very, very conservative perspective. And it doesn't leave a lot of space for choice or just anything other than what's in that narrow perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure how we could change that.
Yeah. I mean, we can change that, but I think and I think especially when I see, I'll just speak from Black perspective because I'm Black. When I see doctors who are Black, I think it's hard for them to step out of that box, because if you're vilified by your colleagues, if you're the one that's on the fringe when you're really not on the fringe, you're in the big range of what's normal. It makes life for you harder. It could be changed though. I don't think it's that complicated to look at a pregnant body that absolutely nothing's wrong with you. And your care with them is to make sure that what you already know is true. It's just a confirmation. Every time you go to the doctor's office or see your care provider, you should feel like, I feel like my baby's good, I feel healthy, I feel great, or I don't, like I'm having a headache, or I just feel off. And you should already know that. And so, but sometimes I feel medicine undermines what you know about yourself. You're not even listening to the clues that your body is giving you because you're waiting for your clinician to tell you what's wrong.
Yeah.
So really, I think midwifery care is about reminding you that you know. I tell everybody, having a baby is about the survival of the human species. It's not about our choices. So our bodies are made to grow healthy humans, push out healthy humans without anybody else doing anything. So your seeing your provider is really a confirmation of that. I feel like sometimes when we walk into a doctor's office, we feel like, thank God we have the doctor. But really, I feel like, thank goodness I can trust you to like tap into your wisdom about your own body. Because it has to be that way because that's how we survive as humans.
Yes.
Like it literally has to be that way.
Yeah.
So obstetrics, like Anna said, has undermined our trust in that. And just the foundation of obstetrics has made us believe that our body, like we don't know anything about our body. And that's just really not true.
Yeah, I totally feel that way because I've never felt more connected with my body until I got pregnant. I was just more sensitive to cues and just differences, and you're obviously going through so many changes, so that's going to happen. But it was the first time in my life where I felt comfortable voicing concerns that I had, and I didn't have to wait on a doctor to tell me, oh, well, this came back this way, so we're going to look out for this. I was able to tell them beforehand. But not everybody feels comfortable doing that. So,
and we've seen also time and time again that women, but especially women of color, especially Black women, Beyonce, Serena, doesn't matter who you are.
Yes.
If they say, I'm feeling something's going on, right? It's not only that a lot of women don't trust themselves. Women who know their bodies well.
Yes.
And who tell you what's happening are then told,
you're fine.
You're fine.
Yeah.
So there's a clear disconnect in communication on various levels, whether you're someone who does advocate for yourself, whether you're somebody who is struggling with that because all of the sources of information around you are telling you to not trust yourself. Overall, we're not trusting people with their own bodies, and that's very concerning.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I want to shift into the history of midwifery. It doesn't have to be super extensive, but I don't even know this. So if you could tell me, Debbie, where did midwifery originate? What is it, just for people who just don't know?
I think originate is a very gigantic question.
I know.
But here in the U.S., enslaved Africans were the people who delivered babies all the time.
Yeah.
And it was when white doctors decided they wanted to take that over, those Black midwives trained them, but then they required those Black midwives to take a test to be able to practice. But it was also illegal for those Black midwives to read and write. So it was really impossible for them to pass a test that they had trained someone in to be able to practice their profession. So really, loosely, that's the foundation of midwifery in the U.S., really. Is it Marion Sims?
Yeah.
Yeah,
J. Marion Sims.
J. Marion Sims is a doctor that, like, even today, the things that we used in obstetrics, he invented those things practicing on enslaved Africans.
Without
any medication, without anything.
But he's still referred to as the father of gynecology.
He's referred to as the father of gynecology. So everything you could, that how we practice today is based on what he founded on enslaved Africans that without medication that had no right over their own bodies. And once he perfected it, then he introduced those practices to white women.
How do you dismantle a system like that?
Honestly, truthfully, the only way to dismantle it is to burn the shit down to the ground and start over on a foundation that's built with. Because how can you, still to this day, there's studies that doctors today still believe that Black folks don't have the same pain tolerance as other people.
Yeah.
So like the conditioning and the mentality and the training is still the same. It's ingrained on a system that's so disgusting that until you like burn it down and start it over. It will still be fighting the same battles, maybe different levels. Not that things haven't gotten better, because they have, but we will still be fighting the same issues until the system is like completely dismantled.
Yeah, and I would say it's, just to add to that, it's a product of a larger system of American patriarchy. Yeah. And I'm not even trying to be self-promoting, but this is what my next book is about, largely because we don't understand how American patriarchy operates. And when I was speaking about the women in my first book, the mothers of MLK Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin, Alberta, Bertus, Louise, and everybody asks, how did we not know about these women? How did we not think about these women? Why did we kind of allow them to be erased? And we then start to see that all these instances that are direct products of American patriarchy start to feel like they're all separate of each other. Like they're all like happening randomly, but that's not true. It's a direct result of one, placing white women below white men, right? And saying white men are kind of what we should all aspire to be, and that they should remain in power, and that they should have all of the resources. This is what our founding fathers envisioned. And then a whole other group of people, all these other groups that do not fall under white man or white woman, are not even really considered human, right? We're not even given the protections of an already problematic patriarchal system. We're seen as less than human. We're seen as animals, right? So if that's already the foundation of our entire nation, and it wasn't hidden, it was very strategic, it was written into the rules, it was written into the laws.
It was written into the Constitution.
Directly, right? Yeah. And knowing that what they were doing, this was very purposeful. Of course, we're going to then see later on a system that says, oh, Black women don't have feelings. Yeah. Clearly, we can operate on them and cut into them while they're laboring, or who are going through other issues or conditions. We're not going to even give them any kind of medication because they don't need it. It all stems from this initial vision. And when we fast forward to where we are as a nation today, and I know we're going to be getting into a question around paid leave and all these different ways in which we're making it so difficult just to be parents in the United States of America, it's because largely our Supreme Court is the most unchanged portion of our government in our entire American history. It has remained largely the exact same.
Yes.
And most of our Supreme Court justices would call themselves originalists, meaning they interpret the Constitution as it was originally meant to be. So they don't see it as kind of a living, breathing document that can shift and be flexible. They also, unapologetically so, and they're not hiding it, are trying to maintain a system that our founding fathers envisioned. So there's this direct line, there's this direct connection that many of us have become completely blinded to. And so when we see it play out the way it's meant to, we continue to get shocked, we continue to get surprised, right? Roe v. Wade is overturned, and everyone's like, how? How in the United States of America? Well, of course in the United States of America.
Yeah.
When President Donald Trump was able to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices, the youngest that we have, right? They will be there for as long as they want to be. This was not a mistake. And he said very clearly, we are going to overturn Roe v. Wade. So what I feel is the most concerning thing is we continue to be so shocked and so surprised. And all of our energy is surrounding the question of how is it?
It's literally right there. It's literally right there. But I think some of the shock too is that because it's like some things are so inhumane that it's like people couldn't possibly be that. Even the fact that you pay 20% copay on your insurance, that whole the foundation of that was to deny Black folks health care. Because they were like, well, they can't. Well, it was going to be free, but then Black people will get free health care.
Yeah.
So let's make them pay because they won't be able to. Like she said, it's not a secret, but I think, it feels good to move in a space where you don't think about things on that level.
Of course.
It's not fun. And I think people are like, how could that even be?
Yeah.
But it really is literally so transparent. It's not a secret at all.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially for Black people, it's obviously not a secret to us, but I see I've been watching a lot of videos from historians and people who study like African American history and things like that. And they say that we are taught such a sanitized version of African American history, of Black history. And people really don't realize how bad it was, you know? And I think because of that, and because, you know, there's just an erasure of Black history as well, I don't know how we can move past that or even compensate for that.
They're trying to take it out of the...
Exactly.
They're trying to make it illegal to be taught.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think I saw in Texas there were history books that called slavery indentured servitude. So it's like, it's ridiculous. But
yeah, I mean, and that's why I do believe that the most necessary thing we need right now is to identify this system very clearly, to stop believing that these things are unrelated, but instead to be able to see it very obviously, right? So that's how you can start to take it apart. If you can't see it and you think these things are disconnected and you don't actually see like the web that's connecting all of it, then we're just sitting there, you know, like when a spider web is on you and you like can't get it on. You're like, wow, I feel it. And everyone's like, you're just imagining things. Like, especially like for women and women of color, there's this constant like, oh, you're just imagining that. That's not happening. And you're like, no, it's like something is affecting me, right? And that's a real thing. And so the more we can make that so plain and so obvious so that we're not wasting our energy in the question of how and why, and we're now saying, what are we going to do about it? That's the first step. That's when we can take it apart. That's when you can like light a match and burn it. But if you can't see the thing, and we're allowing ourselves to be fooled and we're allowing things to be erased from history, then it just plays into the sustainability of the system that likes to disguise itself. But it's there. And it's very obvious. And we can point back to laws, even if those laws are no longer in place, right? Laws that said if women get married, they can no longer work. Okay, that was an actual law. It's called the marriage bar. MLK Jr.'s mother faced this. She was well educated. She had a bachelor's degree. She had a teaching certificate. She was going to become a teacher in the public school system. But there was a law at the time for middle class women, right? Because we know if you were poor, they didn't care if you were working, right? Obviously, poor women have always been working. But for middle class women, if they were at all going to somehow come close to being able to provide for their own families, they were told you can no longer do this. So why then fast forward to today where we feel when we're working moms and and I think all moms are working, whether you're stay at home or not, that is one of the hardest jobs out there, that you feel like people are trying to push you out of your job. It's not just a feeling. That's the remnant of something that was already there. People are trying to push you out of your job. That is real. And instead of thinking to yourself, why am I imagining this? Why is this happening? How? What are we going to do about it? So that's the shift that needs to take place.
Thank you all for listening to part 1 of this episode with Anna and Debbie. Make sure to tune in next week for part 2 to hear more about these two amazing women and how midwifery is a game changer for all birthing people.